check the names, the computers, remember the last person
Okay.
sometimes.
Trouble with
Probably
this.
less
one.
than-
Yep.
So,
Oh, yeah, I was there last time. I was on and I got kicked.
everyone's set?
Yeah.
No trouble with the microphone here. Anybody have suggestions? Computer.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. You don't want.
Good.
Oh, listen.
Yeah.
You can-
Why do I keep,
Office.
I keep wanting to do that?
Okay.
Thank you,
You guys
Paula.
are too, right?
Yeah.
Who has to? Like,
Monday holiday.
Okay, welcome to the Wednesday, December 28th, 2022 Ithaca Town Board meeting, our end of the year meeting. We are multitasking today, so you may see some people coming in to pay their tax bill. So there might be some activity in the back corner over there during the meeting. We will start with opening a public hearing regarding the following proposed local law, amending chapter 125 of the Town of Ithaca Code titled Building Construction and Fire Prevention to conform chapter 125 with the New York State requirements for administration and enforcement of the New York State Uniform Code and Energy Code. So I think at the last meeting in your packet, you received the red line version. What we sent out for the packet today was just the clean version. Marty did meet with Rich and myself just to kind of review the changes that are being required by the state. Marty, is there anything you want to just say as background?
No, I don't think so. I think I've cleared over the last couple meetings, I've identified that it is a requirement in New York State that we, as the town, adopt this prior to the year end. And it's reflective of what their suggestions are and requirements are.
So are there any members of the public who would like to address the board on this topic? Paula, I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room.
No, I don't see anyone in the waiting room and I have not received any emails.
Okay, so we'll just wait a minute to close the public hearing. How often, when would we anticipate needing to do this again, Mark?
The last time this was actually required by the state was 2007. So previously we had gone through, the town had gone through and there'd been some recommendations made because of legal requirements that we did not have built into our law. And so that's why we amended it previously, which was roughly about 2 years ago. But this is actually a requirement of the state at this point. So hopefully not for another 14, 15, 16 years would be
Okay.
nice.
So I will close the public hearing at 11:06. Would someone like to move the resolution?
I'll second.
So Pam and Bill seconds. Any comments, any questions? If not, all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Marty, for your work on that. Moving on to the second public hearing, which I will open at 11:06. This is amending Town of Ithaca Code, Chapter 270. Special regulations regarding short-term rental use associated with cooperative corporations, trust and operating permits. The public hearing is open. There is not a resolution before you because we needed to give a 30-day GML review. So we're holding the public hearing today. And assuming there's no changes, we do not need to repeat the public hearing. It would be back before the board on January 23rd. So are there any members, and in your packet, of course, you received the red line version of the changes. Are there any members of the public? Rich, do you want to just give the briefest of overview of what?
I think that most board members are familiar with the modifications that are being proposed. There's sort of unintended outcomes of the exemption for cooperative corporations. We exempted cooperatives on the assumption that there would be a greater degree of internal oversight due to the board of directors and corporate structure, but it also allows for parties to form cooperative corporations for the purpose of evading any and all oversight and operating full-time rental businesses. I think that what we're trying to foreclose upon now that we're about to bring our compliance regime into the fore, as people are forced to come out of the shadows, I imagine there would be a lot of people who are also looking for ways to get around the law. And this is a loophole that was discovered, and we're endeavoring to close it by requiring that units that are owned by cooperative corporations also serve as the principal residence of a proprietary leaseholder.
Thank you. And you, board members may remember it was a year ago at the end of the year meeting that we actually passed the short-term law when TN and Pat were still board members. So it's interesting that a year later, we are making an adjustment, which we knew that there would be some adjustments that we would need to make to the law. Paulette, I'm not seeing anyone here to address the board on this topic. Is that
I
correct?
don't see anyone's hand raised.
And so I will close the public hearing at 11:09. Any further questions, comments?
I'll just point out too, Rich, it looks like there's a slight change for trust as well.
Yeah, that's
For
that's
people who have grantor trust.
yeah, that's correct. I think it's very self-explanatory.
Other questions, comments? So again, there's no resolution. I close the public hearing. We won't repeat the public hearing since there's no proposed changes. So this will be before the board with a resolution on January 23rd. We'll see if we hear anything back from the GML. Anything else on that right now? Okay, moving on to then setting a public hearing. This is regarding changes to the Town of Ithaca Code, the Ithaca Energy Code. You have a memo from Nick, pretty detailed memo from Nick in your packet. And the resolution will set the public hearing for January 9th. Would someone like to move the resolution setting the public?
I'll move that.
Bill, is there a second? Rob seconds. Any questions, comments? And it's a pretty detailed memo that Nick provided. Okay, all those in favor of the public hearing on January 9th, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Moving on to item number 4. This is authorization to select an engineering consultant to award contract for the Town Line Road Bridge project. And there were supplemental materials sent out with this in the packet. I'll ask Dan to just give us a brief overview about why we're moving forward on this bridge repair.
There's another round of Bridge New York funding that is out, and we met with Tompkins County Highway and the city of Ithaca just to go over priorities on what structures are in disrepair. The Town Line Road Bridge is very high on the list. There's currently a large spall hole in the bridge itself and a lot of undermining of the bridge abutments. Long story short, we've all agreed, the city, the county, us, we've agreed that we're going to put our efforts into pursuing the Bridge New York funding for the Town Line Road Bridge. probably on the magnitude of $2 million by the time it's all said and done. But right now, we're hiring, would like to hire Barton and LaJudas as our engineering consultant to do the design work and fill out the application for all that. So that's pretty much what this resolution is about, to hire Barton and LaJudas as our engineering consultant for this project.
So Dan, the resolution before us that has a fixed fee of XXXX. What, should we put in some amount?
That, I have that right now, and that is $500. So for a fixed fee of $500 for part A of this agreement, Barton and LaJudas is going to put together our application for Bridge New York.
Okay.
After if the monies are awarded, we'll then move into part B and subsequently part C of the agreement, where we negotiate fee with the consultant. Moving forward.
So we'll see more in-depth figures as we move forward in the project. I forget, is the county, so I know this is partnership with the county. Does the county provide any funding, or it's only, it's really state money?
Just as a general concept, there'll be providing a 5% cost share. The way the Bridge New York funding is set up for bridges, 95% of it is funded through Bridge New York, and 5% is a local share. The county has agreed to pay that 5%.
Okay.
And Joe and I are most likely going to work through an additional MOU with the county. If the funding is awarded, we'll work through something that's a little more in depth as far as who's responsible for what, long-term maintenance, cost overages that we might see on that project, who covers that. So that'll be worked out if the funding is awarded.
So this is in part to get the application. This
That's-
approval.
That's what
Okay. Questions? Rich?
This is a general question. How long will this process, assuming the money comes through and the bridge is replaced or repaired, how long will that take? And are there any major safety issues now? I mean, is the bridge going to need to be closed prior to construction due to safety issues or no?
Well, right now, the bridge, there was a bridge inspection that was done over the summer, and it did identify a couple, I want to say, safety issues with just the guide rail on the bridge. Just the elevation of the road being built up over time, the guide rail isn't quite at the right height. And there's a hole in the bridge that's being covered by a plate. So there are some safety issues. That information went to the state. The state in return has reviewed it and just red flagged the bridge, but there's no weight restrictions or no other restrictions at this point in time. But we are anticipating there might be some further weight restrictions that might happen. But that's yet to be determined.
So the state will start derating the bridge when it gets below a weight threshold of 30 tons.
Who is inspecting the bridge at this point? That you indicated that information was forwarded to the state. They didn't send anybody down to.
Yeah,
to the
so we don't, this is my lack of depth of knowledge, but all the bridges over 35 feet in length are controlled by the county. So the county is required to do bridge inspections on the bridges. They in turn hire a consultant, and that consultant went out, just a private engineering firm went out on behalf of the county and did this inspection. When they find issues, the county then sends this information to the state, and it kind of escalates at that point. That's where we're at.
Thank you.
I think to answer the other part of your question, Rich, I think it was, it's going to be a 3-year process from design to construction implementation.
We have 2 years, 2 years to spend the money.
Okay. Thank you.
Question. I'm not clear on who owns the bridge. Is it a town road, but the county owns the bridge? And
Yeah, in general, bridges that exceed 35 feet are owned by the county.
I don't know if it's 35, I think it's 20, somewhere in there, maybe over 20. I have to go
Okay.
back and look, but
So yes, this is a county bridge. And what usually comes into play, and this is where the MOU will come into effect later, is generally on the bridges in the town, there are certain components that we need, like the surface treatments, the wear and force. the guide rails, maybe the walkways and bridges. Those are generally things that we as a town would maintain. And the county would maintain all the subsurface structural elements. That's something that we're going to work out. If we get the
Okay. And you said the county would pay 5% and the federal government 95?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the resolution? I believe we did a first and second on this one.
No.
Okay, would someone like to move the resolution? I'll move it. Is
I'll
there a
second.
Rich seconds. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, Dan, for your work on this and letting me be part of the review process. You made it easy for me. Next, this is very exciting. Some of us have been working on the Inlet Valley for 3 years,
5.
for a while. And so there's nothing that the board is voting on today, but we thought we would start with updating all the board members on our new Inlet Valley Overlay District and the legislation that will be coming to you, I think, in January, right?
I guess that's the conversation we want to have.
So
members are-
Sue, I'll turn it over to you and Dan.
I'll just briefly just mention that, so this came about, the Economic Development Committee initiated this. We applied for a grant through Empire State Development many years ago. We got the grant and it led to an economic development study and strategic plan. And this all came about because we saw how the Inlet Valley needed some attention. You had 2 state parks, you have, Ithaca Beer. So there was some potential there, but there seems as though there needed more attention. And coming out of this plan, one of the recommendations was that we needed to review our zoning or revise our zoning for this area. So that started this process. Might have been 3 years ago. So this has taken a while, but this is what we've come up with. It's passed on to the Planning Committee. The Planning Committee has been working on this most closely the last year. So Dan Tasman wrote a memo, cover memo about this. And so I don't know how maybe you want Dan to maybe review a little bit of the memo, talk a little bit about the law itself, and where this area of rezoning is proposed to be. So maybe with that, Dan, maybe I'll
Okay,
pass that to you.
thank you. Basically, what Sue said is that, again, our comprehensive plan and the 2018 Economic Development or Inlet Valley Strategic Plan, they both identified, that Inlet Valley was kind of uniquely situated to take between 2 state parks, just beyond the city line. It was uniquely situated to address certain visitor needs, that there was kind of like a budding, in a way, what we could call agri-culinary kind of uses, farm to table, Ithaca Brewery, those types of, anything that really is outdoors related to the state parks. But the zoning, unfortunately, didn't allow those types of uses except in a few places. One of the challenges with addressing zoning in that area, though, is that you don't want to see Elmira Road in that area in the Inlet Valley turn into a long commercial strip. We don't want to see it become kind of a, basically, Elmira Road, strip 2.0. So that was a bit of a challenge in trying to draft regulations that would allow the comprehensive plan to be implemented. As how do you allow commercial uses in a semi-rural setting, yet not turn Elmira Road into a strip? And this is what we've come up with. We think, it's a good solution. Give you an idea of it. There's an overlay zone. This is the first time we've done overlay zoning in the town. Overlay zoning is a layer that applies on top of existing zones. So the underlying zones aren't going to be repealed or changed, anything like that. We'll just have a new zoning layer that's placed on top of it. And the new zoning layer defines what uses are allowed. They're different than, in some cases, they're different than what's normally allowed by default in the underlying district. And it also clarifies our, based, when it comes to architecture, site planning, design, that certain things that we don't really talk about that much in our regular zoning code, we define very tightly in the Inlet Valley overlay, so that the kind of character that we want to see, that the economic development plan talked about, the comp plan talked about, that aspect is implemented, and that also helps to make things a little bit more, for anybody who owns land in the area, for anybody who wants to develop, the rules are there. There's a lot less guesswork, a lot less back and forth. So if there's any, the memo kind of describes things a little bit more. If there's anything else that you want me to explain, I'd be glad to do so. Thanks.
So Dan, maybe just explain why there's two zones.
Yep, let me
why
see.
there's two-
I'm gonna go do a screen share. Just a minute here. Let me make sure I get the right page here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a map of the overlay zone. And there's two different overlay zones, really. There's one master zone, really. It's the Inlet Valley overlay zone, but there's the Inlet Valley center zone. And this covers the more built up, more, kind of commercialized, industrialized areas that are between 5 Mile Drive and just between 7 Mile Drive, Calkins Road. That's the area that's highlighted in yellow. Ithaca Beer is just outside of that zone, but also inside it, we have, the hotels, motels, some of the light industrial uses. The area that's in brown right now, that's industrial zoning. The area that's in red, that's neighborhood commercial zoning, or the NC zone. This is the area where both the comprehensive plan and the economic development plan envisions more intensive development. Again, it's not like the Elmira Road Strip 2.0, but site planning regulations, architectural regulations are there to make sure that whatever gets built there lies, soft on the land. South of that, the area that's highlighted in blue is the Inlet Valley Transition Overlay. This is kind of the transition between, again, the agri-culinary, hospitality, outdoors, recreation-oriented uses, really the uses, more intensive uses that are catering to state park visitors, those who are looking for, breweries, so on. And this is the transition zone, which allows very, more limited commercial uses, very small scale. And, again, residential, agricultural, agritourism related uses in a setting that, again, doesn't visually extend the strip, but considers that there's heavy traffic along Elmira Road. And down here, it's at the far bottom of the zone that starts off with the Gables, and and you move up, and there's various little farm stands, scattered residential uses throughout that area right now. That's an area where we would still prefer to see, again, allow commercial, very limited commercial development, small scale commercial development, limited range of uses, but allow them in a setting that would continue to preserve kind of like the semi-rural environment that's in that area. So
Thank you, Dan. I think that was
Thank you.
helpful. So we just want to see what questions there might be between the Economic Development Committee and then the Planning Committee. We did give quite a bit of thought to the allowable uses for the reasons that Dan stated. We don't want to just see a continuation of Route 13 in the city down this stretch through the town, and want to retain a certain character, if you will, in that. So I'm just going to open it up for questions, comments. Rob.
I have a general question. So
Okay.
what specific types of businesses or development was blocked by the previous zoning and will be facilitated by this new plan? Can you give some examples?
Yeah, sure. This industrial zone here, the brown that's in the, right now, that would become IVC or Inlet Valley Center, doesn't allow most retail uses, restaurant uses, anything like that. Office related uses, allows mainly light manufacturing. And the demand for light manufacturing in that area is just not there. If that area was developed for light manufacturing, the regulations that we have right now in our zoning would really, the development that would result would really detract from that corridor in that area. Metal buildings, kind of minimal landscaping, that kind of thing. So what kind of uses would be allowed? Let me go back up to the use table here and pop it up. And if we see over here, the IVC overlay, that's Inlet Valley Core, anything that's in the LI column and the NC column, really the LI column is what we really want to look at, that has a check mark would now be allowed. So we'd be looking at, for example, companion animal services. That's kind of a catch-all for veterinarian, doggy daycare, so on. Hotel, motel, less than 60 rooms, bed and breakfast, daycare center, personal health, professional office up to a certain size, restaurant, cafe, bar up to a certain size, up to 5,000 square feet without a drive-through window. Retail and service general, again, up to 5,000 square feet, or 7,500 square feet with special permit approval, but not what I call mechanical commercial uses or, trade uses, things like that, car dealers and machine shops, things like that. Then we have, plant nursery, retreat or event venue, winery, distillery, brewery, still allows low impact industrial uses, but and subject to architectural standards, landscape, site planning, so on. A few others, community workshop, cultural facility, farmers market, and so on. So anything really in that LI column.
Yeah. If I can add, excuse me, Dan,
Yeah.
some of the uses that are there now, Rob, like the Green Tree,
Mhm.
the Redemption Center, or some other things that are in that corridor are there because they got use variances, upwards of 20 years ago. And they've been still working off those use variances. If they stop that use for more than a year, they would lose that ability and it would just go back to just what the limited uses are in the light industrial zone.
Okay, so in this table, like everything listed in the left column that's in white is permitted under the new overlay. And then the right-hand columns just show what used to be permitted without the overlay.
Well, the left-hand column is the use. The right-hand column show what zones overlays those uses would be allowed in.
So okay, so they're all allowed in the new overlay.
Yeah, this covers everything.
Right.
We put everything in one. We previously sort of had we kind of, the planning committee worked this out because at one time there was just kind of a long list of what's allowed in the overlay, but then you would have to go back to the underlying zone to figure out what would be allowed. This shows everything in one location.
Okay, just one more follow-up question. Like in
Okay.
lodging, it shows that it's not allowed in the, wait, you just scrolled off the page.
Okay, let me go back
Just-
here, lodging.
Not allowed in IVT.
Right.
Right? But does that mean it's not allowed in IVT, a hotel and motel?
That's correct, because that's a more intensive use. If you're looking at a hotel motel up to 60 rooms, if allowing something with that kind of intensity, but not allowing, let's say, a 5,000 square foot restaurant or, 5,000 square foot, retail store, anything like that. It's something where if we just allowed all those uses in IVT and IVC, it really doesn't differentiate between the zones. The IVT, again, it's meant to be kind of a transitional zone and to really preserve the more agricultural, low density character of that area.
Okay, thanks. I think I understand it.
Okay, thank you.
We very much had in mind that this is between two parks, two state parks.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people go to, in particular, I think Tremont State Park. But the numbers are just incredible, the number of visitors. So we're hoping to be a little bit more proactive in helping seek out businesses that might want to locate here if this gets approved and moves forward from the board. Other questions, comments? By the way, we've also, Sue, you may have just mentioned, we've been keeping local property owners updated on this plan
Yeah,
throughout.
They've all, some of the stakeholders we've worked with pretty closely, and they received emails early on, but recently, I think earlier in December, we sent out postcards to all the property owners that would be affected, just letting them know what's going on. And there's a website that we've created where they can get hold of these documents. And we've had a lot of other meetings. I guess we didn't mention that throughout the, while the Economic Development Committee was working on this, and we had the consultants working on the economic development plan, as well as the consultants that then were starting to work on the zoning. We had a lot of meetings. We did have, we had several public meetings. We'd had stakeholder meetings. So there has been a lot of outreach over the last 5 years on this, in this area, on this project.
And you'll see in the consent agenda is a potential referral of this overlay district local law to the planning board. So this is also just to see if we're comfortable with that before it gets to consent. But other questions, comments?
I just want to thank Sue and Dan and everybody who's working on
Thank you.
this. That it's been quite a while, and so it's very exciting to see.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
Anything else, Dan?
Just curious if you could maybe explain a little bit about how you drew some of the boundaries, especially when you get to Enfield Falls Road, like the Inlet Valley transition overlay doesn't go all the way to Enfield Falls. There's kind of a missing triangle piece.
I think that deals with property lines there, Dan.
Yeah,
So-
let me get back to the map here.
We did not, we did not want, I know why, we did not want to extend this down Enfield Falls Road. We didn't want to have commercial development on Enfield Falls Road, and that's why it stops there.
Okay. Any reason why half the public works facility is in the overlay and it's not?
It was for a while. If you want to be taken out, you can. It just, we had a different shape for a while and things got reduced, and that's how it ended up.
Okay.
We're not anticipating any change to that.
Mhm.
Potential.
It will allow you to have an inn, at a location if that's something. you-
Dan's more interested in a brew pub, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just, sorry, I always ask the question.
That's fine. That's fine.
Thanks.
Other, Sue?
No,
Other questions, comments? Was comfortable with referring this draft to the planning board?
and then the plan also would be, if you are comfortable with this, we would bring this back in January to, what would January 9th, is that to set the public hearing for February?
Sounds like we're comfortable with that.
Great.
So,
Great.
thank you, Dan and Sue.
Great.
Thank you.
And it is very exciting. Moving on to sad to see one person go, but we're excited to welcome another person. So this is appointment of a new director of planning. Sue is retiring effective January 28th.
Right, that 28th, yes.
And
What year?
5, I think, of 2023. And we are pleased to welcome CJ Randall, who's currently with the town of Lansing, to this position. Would someone like to move this resolution? Rich, is there a second? I'll second. Questions, comments?
I think just reflecting on the application, the interview process, I think we were fortunate to have several qualified candidates, and it was, I think we've landed in a good place, and looking forward to working with CJ and calling Sue on the phone endlessly.
And you can see that she is planning on starting January 17th. So there will be some overlap between CJ and Sue. Yeah, it was a good process to go through, and we're pleased with where we ended up. Any further comments? All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. In continuation of saying goodbye to folks. So the next resolution is recognizing Liba Mayor Swan for dedicated years of service. She has served for 8 years. She was appointed to the planning board in March of 2015. She brought fairness and consistency while serving as chair of the planning board from January 1st, 2021 through December 21st, 2022. The town is grateful for her service as an active participating member of the planning board and has greatly benefited from her considerate review of planning board projects and documents and her desire to serve our municipality. Whereas the town of Ithaca is indebted to Liba for her invaluable contributions to the community. Resolved on this 28th day of December that the town board of the town of Ithaca, on behalf of the town and its residents, expresses its sincere appreciation and gratitude to Liba for her dedicated service to our community. Would someone like to move the resolution? Margaret, is there a second? Eric, any questions or comments?
I just want to comment that I got to serve under Liba as chair of the planning board, and just really appreciated the grace that she brought to that position. And I learned a lot from her in the short time that I was an alternate on that board. So I appreciate her very much.
Any other comments? And I believe that the planning, well, I guess at our meeting in January, we'll approve who is going to be the new chair of planning board. So all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, Liba. Moving on to the consent agenda. Would someone like to move the consent? Pam, is there a second? Eric seconds. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. I'll mention the correspondence that was sent out to the board. So you can, there were 3 items in the correspondence. We do want to mention you'll get. Sorry?
Available on the desktop.
On your desktop as well, right? We will mention you will get an invitation, but David Klein is retiring December 31st. And we will have a recognition for him on January 9th from 4 to 5 out in the lobby. So we hope that board members will be able to come early on January 9th to help recognize David. And there will be a resolution for, we finally decide, 41 years of service to the town. 41 years of service to the town in various positions. That's pretty amazing. Are there other items to update board on or just put on the table today? Anything? Okay, if not, we'll close the meeting at 11:42. Thank you, everyone.